Hello everyone, Gaussian Gamer here. Just wanted to make an update video. As you can see by the title of my save, this is now perhaps not a full ALU, but it's definitely making progress in that direction. As you can see, if you saw my previous video at least, it got a lot bigger, like a lot bigger. Kind of beyond my render distance almost. But regardless, so the actual ALU is all in blue. Everything that's auxiliary is either in green wool or this gray stone here. So I guess like some of the first changes that I made were with the position of the adder, because as I said in my original video, it was just an adder, not a full ALU. I wanted to give it more functionality. So it made sense to kind of make it possible to extend the outputs here so that I could just add on functionality linearly, and as you can see, given the choice, I could add on more functions. So the output from variable A are these red wires on the ground, and the output from variable B are these blue ones up top. As before, this is the output, or sorry, this is the actual storage component for variable B. This is the storage component for variable A. There's a lot more kind of going on above that. As you can see, it's a lot more cluttered than last time, but I'll get to that in a minute. So for now, this is the actual adder itself, but now instead of just being an adder, it's an adder subtractor. I took this kind of loosely, well, perhaps not so loosely, but from a video on YouTube, just kind of giving just a basic thing. As you can see, what toggles between addition and subtraction is going to be this input here. If you know how a subtractor works, like you have to put a signal to the carry in, you have to invert the signal from the one that you're subtracting, yada yada yada. But then, so this is the system of actual adders right here. As you can see, there's the carry between them. But then this system right here deals with correcting the carry, because as you know, you have to ignore the largest bit when you do this subtraction by just turning an adder into a subtractor. And then that output goes into this system under here, which I'll get to in a minute. But so, as I wanted to make this a full ALU, I had to give it more functionality. So for instance, this series of 8 wires here will take the outputs of A and B and combine them in AND gates. So this result right here is just A and B. Currently the variables are just empty, so there's nothing in them. And then right here, these constitute A exclusive OR B, or just A XOR B. And these will just be output to the system of wires, which will be fed back into the output display that I discussed last time. But in order to choose which ones you want to display, because clearly you might not want all of them together at once, I used a system of these what are they? Pistons. There we go. Of pistons in order to determine whether or not a signal will be sent to the display. These link to a system of levers in the main kind of area that I used in the last video. But when one of these levers is pulled down and it provides power, it'll extend this piston, which will then extend the signal through. And it's kind of partitioned into 3 areas. So this is the area for the XOR gates. And then here's the area and the set of pistons for the AND gate. And then under here are the set of pistons for the adder subtractor. And just to kind of show, oh yeah, so like originally I split up the outputs to the displays and to the transfer system to the input variables. Originally I split them up way back here, but now I split them up a lot later, so that's a little bit more efficient. But once again, so these actual levers will determine what you're displaying. So for instance, if I were to pull that down, well, the variables are currently empty, but if there were anything in them, it would show A plus B in this case. But as you can see, that will provide power. to these set of pistons, which are now all open, and, oops, wrong set of pistons, which are now all open and would provide power if there were anything stored in these gates. Well, so moving on, as I now have a subtractor, I needed to be able to show if there were a negative value, so I basically added in another bit to the system, which is this one right here and these guys right here as their analogs for the original variables. But as you can see, if the light is off, it means that this result is positive, and if it's on, it means it's negative. And well, I guess I'll show an example before I go away. So if I wanted to put 44, or perhaps let's say negative 44 using this lever into variable A. And as you can see, well, if you saw my last video, I changed this from a 2-button system to a toggle system between variables A and B. But regardless, so now you can see it is negative 44, and negative 44 is displayed here. And then if I wanted to put into variable B, let's say 20. But just positive 20. And there we go, positive 20. So of course, there's some is, looks like it's on, yeah, oh no, okay, no, this is right, excuse me. So yeah, this is, so basically the result of this is going to be negative 44 plus, because notice add subtract is set to add, so negative 44 plus 20, the result will be negative 24. Now if I wanted to subtract the two, so basically negative 44 minus 20, I would go like this, and the result should be negative 64. Yeah, negative 64. As you can see, there's kind of like some flashing lights and whatever. That's basically just a result of this current adder being slower. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I added more functionality. Basically means I just can't press the buttons too quickly, but I guess that's fine. And so, as I said before, if I wanted to toggle between what was being displayed, so now this will show A and B. And how I have it currently set up, this A and B, it just ignores this this whole system of positives and negatives. So A and B, the 4-bit is the only one shared between the two variables. I can do A XOR B, and those are the 3 for there. And if I wanted to do A or B, I would just turn on both, and there we have it. So good. Now, of course, and so for like ease of use, you may want to change the sign on a current variable. So like, let's say I wanted to make this negative 20. Well then, so I'd make sure that this is set to input, otherwise bad things would happen. But yeah, so set this to input, current variable to B, and then push this button to make that now negative. Now I can press it again to make it positive, as you see. But that whole system was actually surprisingly difficult to make. I'll show you kind of an example of how I made it. So this is kind of a similar version to this thing I showed in my last video. Basically, so pressing this button will update these two variables. Notice pulling those levers does nothing until I press the update button, and then the lights go on. So this is kind of a similar thing here. Here's the update button. It is currently set to on by the piston being up, and I press it and it goes down. But then let's say I wanted to switch the current state no matter what it's set to. So I would press this button, and ta-da! Turns on, turns off, and it just completely ignores what this is. So in order to do that, well, I'm going to have to temporarily unlock the variable, which is what this does. It feeds into this same update thing. But what I need to do is I need to take whatever current output there is and invert it, but then only feed it into that system when power is being provided, like namely it's being unlocked. So that's what this system of AND gates is for. When no power is being provided, i.e. the button is not pressed, it will take input only from this lever, as opposed to when power is being provided, it will take input only from this little feedback loop, which notice I have to invert the signal so that it will change. Oh, this weather. It's been raining here all day. There we go. But it was kind of important that I get the timings right here, so I had to set this delay to full. Otherwise, it might update twice while this is open, which would not be good because then it would just go on and off again within the same cycle, not actually changing the variable. So I made this exact same system here. Here is that switch button, which follows this set of stairs. Notice that I split it up here, and this feeds into that update system. Note that this piston is either going to determine like whether variable A or B is being used, depending on whether or not that particular lever is being used. And then this whole system will be fed into here, which are these same set of AND gates, which are right here and here. Notice that they're being fed into by that same update system with the button. And then one of them is hooked up to whatever is currently being given to it by either these levers or the output system, depending on what motor you're in. And then one of them is getting whatever the output is. So for instance, from variable B, I kind of split this off. It goes up here, invert it, and then feed it back into here. And once again, because now I'm working with two variables, I need this kind of switch so that if I'm working with variable B, it'll be right here. But if I were working with variable A, it would have this open and instead accept input from variable A. As I said before, the timing is kind of annoying to get, but I eventually figured it out. Just had to open up some of these particular gates, and then it would work. And yeah, and then just feeds that back into these system of negative bits, which are right here. This is the negative bit for A, and the negative bit for B. And yeah. And then, yeah, that'll just update. Eventually, I might want to do something kind of similar in order to be able to take, like, the complement of whatever I have. So if I had, like, all zeros, if I push a button, it would just become all ones and just restore that in the variable automatically. I can kind of do that manually right now, but I would have to, like, erase one of the variables and just do stuff like that. Or I could put in some other functionality, but it would be nice to just be able to just do that fully automatically. We'll see how that actually goes. Of course, I might have to either add in RAM so I could do other stuff like multiplication a lot easier, or put in, you know, 8 of those, which is just no. Let's just not do that. But clearly, the sign bit of each of these variables is extremely important for what I'm going to be doing in like in my adder subtractor. As I said before, I just ignored in the add and XOR type thing. But here, the magnitude is going to be very important. I mean, if they're the same sign, you know, it'll have one thing as opposed to being opposite sign, it'll be another thing. And also whether or not I'm in addition or subtraction mode is important. So here is an XOR gate that hooks up to the current, like they're the two negative bits. So this is an XOR gate. Which will then also hook up to an XOR gate in the addition versus subtraction mode. When it's on, I'm in subtraction. When it's off, I'm in addition. And then that will be fed down here. If this is on, it will take the smaller of the two magnitudes, i.e. the subtraction A minus B. Then if it's off, it'll be doing addition. But then you also have to deal with signs. So for instance, if you have, you know, A plus B versus negative A minus B, you know, those signs are going to be different. So I hooked the output of the sign from these adders up to whatever the sign of variable A is, and just hooked that into an XOR gate, and that just fixes the whole system of pluses and minuses and all that good stuff. And yeah, that's most of the changes that I've made. Yeah, I had to add in just a bunch of other random things. I just kind of made it easier to use. So here's the same kind of thing, use input, use output. So I can still copy variables, even if it's like A or B. And then I could just put whatever the output of A or B is. So note output. I'll put the current output, whatever it is, into variable A. And once again, this whole thing just ignores the positive and negative of it. I might change that later. But yeah, and then in terms of other functionality I might want to put in, as I mentioned in my last video, it would be good to be able to put in like some sort of exponential thing. So it could be in like scientific notation. I could have larger outputs than just 510. But at least now I can go between negative 510 and positive 510, so it's almost like a 9-bit system now. But yeah, that's about it. Just gonna zoom up. Get a final pretty shot. Again, as you can see, much, much, much bigger than the last time. Probably almost doubled in size and complexity. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video.